Tonight, at some point, you'll disappear, not physically. Your body will still be exactly where you left it. You'll breathe, your heart will beat, your brain will remain active. But from your point of view, something much stranger happens. You can remember lying in bed. Maybe you remember closing your eyes, changing position, thinking about something you should have stopped thinking about 20 minutes earlier. And then it's morning. Several hours existed between those two moments. The clock recorded them perfectly. Other people could have walked through the room. Cars passed outside. Your body changed position. Your brain continued doing things. But sometimes, from inside your own experience, there seems to be almost nothing there. That makes sleep feel strangely different from ordinary gaps in attention. If you spend an hour reading, walking, or staring out a window, there's still some sense that you existed through that hour. Sleep can erase that continuity so completely that waking up feels less like reaching the end of an experience and more like suddenly resuming one, which creates an obvious question. Where were you? The simplest answer would be that your brain switched off, except it didn't. A sleeping brain is not an inactive brain. Its electrical activity changes in organized ways throughout the night. It continues regulating your body, responding selectively to what happens around you, and moving through distinct patterns of activity. So the mystery isn't really what happens to your brain while you sleep. The more interesting mystery is what happens to your experience. Because when you ask where you go during those missing hours, you're really asking what happens to the conscious world that was there a moment before. And that world doesn't vanish all at once. Falling asleep doesn't begin when the outside world switches off. It begins when your relationship with that world changes. Sound still reaches your ears, pressure still registers against your skin. Your nervous system hasn't suddenly disconnected from the room. But as sleep takes hold, much of that information becomes less likely to reach conscious awareness. This is why sleep isn't simply sensory shutdown. A sleeping brain can still react to what matters. An unfamiliar sound may disturb you, while a repetitive one fades into the background. Hearing your own name can produce a different brain response from hearing an irrelevant name. And something important enough, a crying baby, an alarm, a sudden crash, can pull the entire system back toward wakefulness. So the outside world is still getting in. You're just no longer experiencing it in the continuous, detailed way you do while awake. As you move deeper into sleep, networks involved in maintaining wakeful awareness change their activity, and communication between brain regions changes with them. Sensory signals can still be processed, but their path into a unified conscious experience becomes increasingly restricted. The room hasn't disappeared. What has changed is your access to it. And once that connection weakens enough, something peculiar becomes possible. Hours can pass in the physical world without leaving anything that feels like hours in your experience. Then you wake up with nothing. No dream, no sense of waiting. No feeling that several hours have passed. Just one moment before sleep and another after it. It's tempting to conclude that consciousness simply disappeared between them, but waking memory can't tell us that with certainty. To report an experience after waking, two things have to happen. You need to have the experience, and some trace of it needs to survive long enough to be remembered. Sleep makes that second requirement unreliable. Dreams demonstrate the problem clearly. You can wake with a vivid dream in mind, only for much of it to disappear within minutes. Sometimes you wake knowing you were dreaming but can recover almost none of what happened. So remembering nothing does not necessarily mean experiencing nothing. Researchers can wake people from different stages of sleep and immediately ask what was happening in their minds. Sometimes people report vivid dreams, sometimes only fragments, a thought, an image, a vague sensation. And sometimes they report no experience they can recall. That distinction matters. From the outside, science can measure brain activity. From the inside, it depends heavily on what a person can report afterward. Neither gives us a perfect recording of consciousness throughout the night. So some of those missing hours may genuinely contain little or no conscious experience. Others may contain experiences that simply fail to survive into waking memory. And then there are nights when the opposite happens. The bedroom disappears, but experience doesn't. An entirely different world takes its place. And this is where sleep becomes much stranger. Because sometimes, after losing access to the world around you, you find yourself inside another one. You see places that aren't in front of your eyes. You hear voices without sound entering the room. You move through spaces while your body remains in bed. You may feel fear, embarrassment, relief, even pain, all in response to events that exist only within the dream. The experience can feel completely convincing while it's happening. Dreaming occurs across different stages of sleep, although vivid, elaborate dreams are especially associated with REM sleep. During these periods, the brain isn't simply replaying a recording of the outside world, it is generating an experience from internally produced activity, drawing on memory, emotion, expectations, and other ongoing processes. That reveals something important about waking life, too. The world you consciously experience is never a direct copy of everything entering your senses. Your brain continuously uses incoming information to construct a coherent experience of what is happening around you. In a dream, that construction continues under very different conditions. External sensory information has far less control over the experience, so the brain can produce a convincing scene without the bedroom supplying most of its contents. Which means consciousness didn't necessarily go anywhere when the room disappeared. Sometimes it kept going without the room. So, where do you go when you sleep? There isn't one place to point to because there isn't one state you occupy all night. Sometimes your connection to the outside world weakens while fragments of experience remain. Sometimes you wake with no experience you can recover at all. And sometimes your brain constructs an entire dream world while the real room barely enters your awareness. What changes across those states isn't where your body is, it's consciousness itself, what reaches it, what appears within it, and what survives into memory afterward. That also explains why sleep can feel like disappearing. Your sense of elapsed time depends on having experiences you can later connect into a sequence. When little or none of that sequence is available after waking, 6 hours can seem to collapse into an instant. You didn't travel through some hidden mental place. Your brain remained in the same skull, continuously active, while your conscious relationship with the world changed again and again. And perhaps that's the strangest part of sleep. Every night, the familiar world you call reality can fade from experience. Sometimes another world replaces it. Sometimes nothing remains that you can remember. Then the outside world takes over again. You open your eyes, and from your point of view, you're back.